Hi there. I'm just back from a conference and I had some really interesting conversations about cost of process, lost cost due to bad process, forecasting, savings around process, and everyone's favorite acronym ROI. So the return on investment of making changes to process. And how can we simulate that potentially before we go down an automation route? Automation vendors, there are many out there. We're one of them. Um, how can I make sure that what I'm going to build is actually going to save me some money? And it got me thinking with the sort of fairly omnipresent discussion around recessions and FTE and reduction and all this sort of all the chatter. Could saving $1 due to a more efficient process be as important in this current climate of macroeconomic woe as earning $1? Or, as our good friend Warren Buffett said, rule number one, never lose money. Rule number two, never forget rule number one. And it got me thinking about a somewhat unsung hero of Nintex Process Manager, the cycle cost. I love it. I think it's an incredible tool that everybody should be using if they have Nintex Process Manager. I think it's very clever for those in the financial side of a business to look at process, to look at the cost of running process, but also to use it as a capability to forecast and stimulate better ways of doing process. So using variations within Process Manager to potentially simulate changes you might make further down the road, whether that be in automation or something else, to make cost changes, to make cost reductions. Now, this is a process. We use it for demo quite a lot. Select the candidate, set up new employee. You'll see the roles, responsibilities on the left-hand side, managers, HR, IT support. And in fairly front and center are my activities. So the things I need to do at a very holistic level, and we can click into these and start to get more detail. But the detail that I'm probably most interested in here are these little timing blobs at the bottom, and then there are associated costs to those. And they all roll up and aggregate up into our cycle cost. And what I can get from this cycle cost view, if I look at the active time to participate in every stage, I can look at the average cost for each role or resource that is associated to that activity. And it's a very simple mathematical calculation. Time multiplied by cost multiplied by volume equals total annual cost. And if I want to look at how I can save some money on running those processes, I want to reduce one of those three variables. So I want to either reduce the time, I want to either reduce the cost per hour average, or I want to reduce the volume. Now, I don't really, for most processes, I know they're probably going to run that number of times because that's what's required of the business to get work done. So I'm not going to be able to reduce my annual volume. If you've opened a newspaper recently, you're probably well aware that wage growth is something that is ongoing. Therefore, I'm probably not going to be able to reduce the average cost per hour of the resource either. So where I'm going to be probably most impactful in my cost reduction is reducing active time. And then I want to look at these individual elements, and I'll probably go into the procedure view to look at the stages within there and how can I make reductions. So where I look at my particular process here as having an ability to make reductions or create and send an employee agreement. So creating a contract. I'm downloading that manually, I'm free typing, and finding the areas for those bits of information to go in, name, address, job role, contract, reporting manager, salary, bonuses, so on and so forth. I'm doing that fairly manually. That could take a number of hours. And And I'm also doing this part manually. As a system administrator, server administrator, I'm going into Active Directory, I'm creating these new roles, I'm adding them to groups, I'm doing various security bits and pieces. That's taking me a bit of time as well. On an annual basis, it's taking my IT team 100 hours. So what I want to do is I want to simulate whether reducing these two elements in time is going to save me much money. So $374,000 a year to onboard 100 employees in my demo. So what I'm going to do is I've got some variations up here. So BAs among us should be able to, among you should be able to know, so the future state, current state methodologies, as is to be methodology. So I want to look at my future state. So this is my state after automation. I haven't workflowed anything yet. I haven't built any workflows. I'm not dragged and dropped an action, but I'm still able to simulate the cost if I were to do that. Now, I've probably had a chat with someone in my organization who knows a little bit about automation. And what we can now see is Nintex Workflow, Nintex Automation Cloud is playing some roles here that it wasn't playing in the current state. So it's going to send emails out to offer positions to candidate with contracts, presumably, to sign. It's going to grab the approval stage. It's going to work that through workflow. But my important parts were my review and receive and review the employment agreement. So building and generating that agreement, creating and send that agreement, and also creating the user account and issuing the credentials. So if I jump to my cycle costs now and open up the areas that I thought I could probably save a bit of time, I create and send out employment agreement. We got a little bit generous on the time here. I know Nintex document generation takes 10 seconds. So it to 30-minute reduction is pretty generous. That's reduced the time for that element. So I'm now able to see for my 100 new users a year, reduce the cost from that 374,000 to $103,000 annually. I've simulated a cost saving by looking at areas of my process that could be automated. I've done a best guess estimate as to how long that time would take from a reduction point of view. I'm not downloading contracts or templates of documents. I'm not system to system copy paste. I'm not save as PDF. I'm not attaching to email. I'm not printing. I'm not wet signing. I'm not scanning. So I'm able to reduce the time and effort around that whole contract piece. And I haven't dragged and dropped an action yet. I haven't built a workflow. So based on cycle cost, I think I've probably done a pretty good job of justifying the cost to venture into automation. And I think that this is one of these unsung heroes of process management, where we can look at how can we simulate cost efficiencies, how can we look at cost reduction as a potential. So cycle cost, one of my favorite parts of Process Manager. Have a look. I think it's well worth a little bit of investigation. Thanks for watching.